Hi, I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech-language pathologist, and welcome to Therapy Tip of the Week from TeachMeToTalk.com and MyEI2.com. This week I wrote a new post for TeachMeToTalk.com with really specific instructions for playing the game Peekaboo. As I was finishing up that article, I thought, I should really make this a Therapy Tip of the Week because there are so many nuances that go into playing a game like that that you may not pick up on just when you're reading an article. Before we talk about how to play peekaboo, let's talk about what you're really working on when you introduce social games like this to toddlers with developmental delays. Little games like this are what professionals often call social routines. When a baby learns to play a game like this, he's really telling you, hey, I've learned how to pay attention. I've learned how to interact with other people. This really is the very first step in helping a child learn how to communicate. All communication begins with social interaction, and that really is the easiest and earliest phase that we look at when we're talking about communication development. Once a child learns how to enjoy being with other people, he forms the foundation necessary to help him learn how to understand and then later use words. Social games are really the starting point for speech therapy for little guys like this who aren't yet talking and who aren't yet interacting with other people. This means when a child who looks like he's really in his own little world, or when he goes out of his way to avoid other people, or when he really struggles just to get eye contact and again have that joint attention when he's playing with a toy with other people. These are the kinds of kids that we need to think about when we are talking about using social games as a starting point for therapy. In typical development, this kind of early communication starts with the parent and with the child really early on. And again, this kind of game could be with toys or even without toys. Now, for some of these kids, when we use toys, we almost limit their ability to be able to pay attention to other people because they're so hyper-focused on the toy. So for these kinds of kids in particular, we need to start with just these social games one-on-one with another person. When I'm talking to parents about this, sometimes a mom will say to me, Laura, I've tried those games. They don't really work for us. My child doesn't like those. What's really happening here? That mom is telling you, I'm not so good at this and I feel like a failure. So we know with these kinds of moms and with these kinds of kids, we have to work a little harder to make these games relevant and interesting so that mom feels encouraged and like she knows what she's doing when she moves forward with these kinds of games with her child. As therapists, we have to really encourage moms and dads to stick with it and to try these games, even if they're not really getting a response at first. But again, that's easier said than done, so I want to talk to you about how I do this with parents in sessions. This really comes by modeling the game so that they can see exactly what you want them to do. You can't just say to a parent, play peekaboo, see you next week, and then come back for the visit and expect it to go well. You really have to show parents what to do. Now, lots of state early intervention programs have started to move toward what they call a consultative model for therapy, meaning that they no longer want you to do lots of direct service provision for children or with children. That's just crazy. The whole point of the consultative model is about parent education. And the first part of educating parents is teaching them what to do. And by teaching them what to do, you often have to show them exactly what you mean. So it doesn't mean that we never directly work with a child. We model these kinds of social games, and we teach parents social games by doing them with their children so they can see how they're supposed to look. You still have to show parents exactly what to do. And again, I have outlined these kinds of directions for you. And this week I wrote the post about it with how to teach a child and a parent to play peekaboo. So this is what you'll do. You'll say to a parent, today we're going to play peekaboo and I want you to watch how I do it, and then you'll be able to do this with your child too. We spell out every single thing that we want to happen, because if we don't, what happens? Let's take, for example, you're playing with a dad and you'll tell a dad, hey, I want you to play peekaboo with your child. So what does he say? He might be a little inhibited. He might say something like, where's Brandon? Where's Brandon? Where's Brandon? Boo. Was that very exciting? Was that very fun? What kid's going to get excited about that? You have to model for them how you want them to play. You have to show them your heightened affect, and you have to teach them all the things that they need to do with their face and their eyes and their voice and their body to get their child engaged. So you're going to play it more like this. You'll cover the child's head, and then you'll say, "Where's Brandon? Where's Brandon? Where's Brandon? Boo!" And again, you might think that is so over the top. I am so uncomfortable doing that and showing a parent how to do it. But if you don't get your affect level up there, a parent's not even going to get close. So you really have to almost go over the top. As I like to say, ratchet it up a notch so that that parent knows how engaged he or she has to be. All right, what happens when you have a child, when you play the game and it goes well and he laughs and smiles and responds to you? You say to that parent, "Woohoo! Goal number 1 met. We did it. He responded to us. That was awesome." Why do we do that? Because if we don't teach a parent all those little things that have to come first in a social game like that, he or she is waiting for the child to say boo. And unless the child pops out the word boo, they think the game's been a failure. We have to teach parents all those steps that go into responding to a game like that. So let's take for an example a kid who didn't respond like that. What do? You try harder. You play again. And that might be the biggest lesson that a parent learns. I've often had parents say to me, "Well, if I tried as hard as you did, of course he would respond." That's the point. You want them to know that they have to try again and again and again to get that response. What else can we do to teach a parent to get a response? Well, for some kids, it just means repetition. It just means we're going to play over and over and over again until the game becomes familiar enough and until they recognize it well enough to begin to respond to you. For some kids, we have to give them some physical cues or some physical assistance. That might mean we have to jiggle them a little or even tickle them to get that kind of positive response that we want to see for them. For some kids, you may have to not be as loud because you might scare them or startle them, but you still have to be on and, again, really model that heightened affect so that the child becomes enraptured and engaged by looking at your face and all those fun facial expressions that we're using. Okay, so let's say that we've done that. We've gotten the child to finally respond because we've played over and over and over again. What's the next step? The next step in a game like this is going to be that you see when you've covered the child with the blanket and you're saying, "Where's Lucy? Where's Lucy?" that she begins to move under the blanket. What does that tell you? That tells you she's learning, she's remembering, she knows the game, and that is a huge step for so many of our toddlers with developmental delays. We're seeing that cognition developed right in front of our very eyes. So again, huge, huge step. And you celebrate that success with mom and dad. You say, "Woohoo! Goal number 2 met. We did it. We did it." And then you're going to keep moving incrementally along and progressing through this whole game of peekaboo. And again, remember that these steps take time to develop. You may not get to goal 1, goal 2, goal 3 all in one session, and that's okay. So many of these children really need time to learn and acquire these kinds of skills. So again, you keep progressing. The next step for a game like this would be, or the next goal would be, that the child would try to remove the blanket himself. You want to teach parents how to give that level of physical assistance so that it's not too much help, but enough help to help the child really, really try. We also tell the parent the words we want them to use. We say, "Listen, I want you to say boo. I don't want you to say peekaboo or pea pie or there he is or any other thing that they might come up with." Why is that? Because boo is easy. The child has a better shot of being able to say it. So again, we want to make sure that we're teaching parents how to perform every little step in this game. We also tell parents that, hey, it might be a while before we hear that word. Why is that? Because if we don't tell them, they're, again, using that as their only measure of success for this game. And we certainly want a parent to understand all the things that go into a child learning how to play a game like peekaboo. And we want parents to have reasonable expectations, not only of us as their therapist, but of their child. So again, you've got to teach them these things. They don't know this automatically. Breaking down really familiar social games like this into tiny steps and helping a child learn one little part after another, and then to be able to do his or her own part are critical goals for young children. And they have to accomplish those before they're ready to understand language, and certainly before they learn to use words to talk. So think about all of those little games that you already use in therapy sessions with children, and think about how you can break those games down into teeny tiny steps or goals, and then teach them that way to the children and the parents of the children on your caseload. My other favorite social games to use besides Peekaboo are So Big, Patty Cake, and then fun little games like Row Row Your Boat, Ride a Little Horsey, and of course Ring Around the Rosies. I like to also do some other original games that you probably do too, but you may not have really delineated the parts to your games, like tickling games or running games or even throwing children through the air. When a child has mastered those kinds of games and can really participate with you, then you move on to using songs with hand motions. And I like If You're Happy and You Know It, Itsy Bitsy Spider, and songs like Wheels on the Bus. Let me add that a child usually learns to do hand motions in their own little part in songs and games before he or she is developmentally ready to use sign language as a strategy to communicate. So if you have a child on your caseload, or if you're a parent working with your own child and he or she is having lots of difficulty learning how to use signs, back up to this step and include social games as your primary therapy strategy for right now. Now, if you don't know the songs that I just mentioned, or if you are still unclear about how to break down these games into little steps, let me recommend a couple of resources for you. Below the video, I've linked in the post articles that I've previously written. The first one is the one that I wrote this week with those specific directions for Peekaboo, and the other one is to an article I wrote in 2008 about using social games, and you can find that if you're just perusing the website teachmetotalk.com. If you want to skip the whole part of figuring this out for yourself, I've made it really, really easy for you with my therapy manual, Teach Me to Play with You, and there are step-by-step directions for dozens of little games and little songs that you can use in therapy. I hope that I've given you some new ideas today in this therapy tip of the week, especially for those toddlers who are not easily interacting with you and responding to others. Social games really, really are the way to go with this kind of kid. That's all for this time for Therapy Tip of the Week. I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech-language pathologist, and thanks from teachmetotalk.com and myei2.com.